I want to draw back to the Instagram live that we've just had, simply because there are certain things that you've said which I know are going to be repeated here. You spoke about in your Instagram live when we were talking about Muslim unity about a colonized mindset. You said that that was one of the obstacles of unity. Elaborate what you mean by a colonized mindset.
Okay, so this is a interesting one, and many people are maybe going to be averse to this kind of discourse. Colonized mindsets, I believe, are the bane, are the poison within the ranks, if you want to call it that, because these people will work hard, as Malcolm X, described rather crudely, saying that, you have house Negroes that were enslaved mindsets, that no matter what the master did, if any of the field Negroes were trying to escape, they would be the first one to go and tell the master. And sadly, these colonized mindsets exist within a Islamic or a Muslim framework, which is very, very sad. When you are calling for the rights for hijab to be defended in France, for example, or if you're calling for the rights of, any other, there's so many different causes within the Muslim community, you will find that these people, these colonized mindsets, are some of the most difficult people that you will have to deal with, and they will be your biggest critics. We had some sisters on our live show that were actually Niqabi sisters who are from France. They've migrated to the UK now, and they're big influencers, mashallah. And one of the things that they said is that their biggest criticism, they say, we are speaking from a position of feminism. How dare any man or any woman, for that, or anyone, dictate what I should wear or should not wear? This goes against, the ideals of feminism. But they say some of their own biggest detractors are who? Are Muslims with colonized mindsets. And so I feel that this issue is a serious issue. Of course, when you have people like this within your community, uniting with these people is impossible. Seeding these people out can only be done by exposing them. And that's why I think 5 pillars, that's an important job also, to expose who those imposters are, because a lot of these people are imposters. They're stooges, they're imposters. A lot of people claim to be representing mainstream Islam or Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but in reality, these people are just stooges. These people are paid members of establishments and have government funding behind them. And sadly, a lot of people get fooled.
I'm glad you mentioned the issue of exposing, because one of the hardest, I would say, one of the challenging aspects of the work of 5 pillars, my dear brother, is sometimes, TK, it's absolutely fine having it out with Islamophobes, Zionists, neocons, white supremacists, and all these kind of different various non-Muslim groups and figures and institutions who have clear agendas against Islam and Muslims. One of the harder aspects of our work is dealing with those within the ranks of the Muslims, within the community, embedded within our community, those who appear outwardly to be practicing, to be normative and so forth. One of the most challenging jobs, and I would even say I wouldn't call it a dirty job, but one of the jobs that has a blowback is having to hold these people to account. Before we take some comments from people online, you also said something else in the previous live, and you said it again. What do you mean by giving charity is easy? Because I could turn around and say to you, Tox, that the fact that Muslims give to your causes, live updates on Syria, and the various charities, whether it's One Nation, One Ummah, that you've previously worked with before you became like this super hot grey, yeah? That when the Ummah gives to these causes, whenever there's a natural disaster or there's a mass refugee crisis, and the Ummah comes, they give their money, they give everything that they can, they take to the streets, they hold protests, petitions, they raise awareness. And you said in this live and in the previous one that sometimes these things are easy. What do you mean by that?
Okay, I'm going to contextualize it for you, and I'm going to say something that some people might find it hot. This is the hot break going to speak. I remember in 2017, maybe it was, I was here in a city in Syria, and there was a coalition airstrike. A coalition airstrike, American, French, British, Saudi Arabian, all of these coalition fighter jets that had this coalition that had been built to fight a war on terror. So some Tomahawk cruise missiles hit a neighborhood. They were apparently supposed to be hitting a terrorist facility. But when we got there, we found that a whole family home had basically been razed to the ground, and a family was trapped under the rubble. Now, the father had come out of his home, and he'd just gone to go get some groceries or something like that. So he wasn't in the home when home got hit. Imagine he's come home, he's heard this airstrike, and everybody's coming. We were some of the first responders on the scene at the time. We arrived with our ambulances and our civil defense equipment and stuff like that. So he's arrived to find that his family is still inside or under the rubble of this home. So we've started furiously digging, trying to pull all these people out. And I remember we pulled out all of his children. All of them died except for one. Okay. And I remember it was a picturesque, not a picturesque, it was a cinematic scene. I compare it somewhat to, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Schindler's List. Schindler's List is a movie about the Holocaust, and the whole movie is in black and white, except for a little girl. She wears a red jacket. I watched it in secondary school when we were learning about the war. It was a similar scene, because obviously when an airstrike happens, especially from a Tomahawk cruise missile, you'll see all the dust. You'll see everything basically goes grey. It's like everything is grayscale now, like you're back in time. And I remember the father, one of his daughters, as he was carrying her to the back of a pickup truck or an ambulance where they were putting all of the bodies, he lifted I handed him his daughter. He lifted her over his shoulder, and she was fully covered in grey. He was fully covered in grey. And as he walked away, I remember a red streak of blood pouring from her head and coming down his shoulder as he walked away. Now, that was one of the most difficult things that I've seen in Syria. And I remember thinking at that precise moment in time, first I felt very helpless as a Muslim. And secondly, at that same time, I said, how dare they do this to these innocent Muslim children and these innocent Muslim families, and there's no repercussions, and nobody knows and nobody cares. Bashar al-Assad has been killing these people for so long, and now this coalition airstrike that's supposed to be fighting a war on terror has now killed these innocent children. And I felt so helpless. But you know what I said to myself at that time? I said to myself, you know what? How am I going to prevent this from happening in 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 50 years' time? Because today, I can't stop it. And today, my food box going to this family is like a slap in the face. Someone who's lost all of their children in an airstrike, and you're going to come and you're going to give them a food box. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that in order for us to stop that coalition airstrike happening in Muslim lands, okay, without any impunity, without any blowback, okay, we have to strengthen ourselves as a Muslim community. We have to build institutions. We have to be able to sell our own narrative. And it was only because some of us were there as Westerners, we raised this case to CNN, we spoke to some human rights activists, we spoke to some different human rights organizations, and America eventually actually apologized for that airstrike itself. And that's very, very rare. The Pentagon actually apologized and admitted that the strikes that took place and it was a mistake. So that's I hope that kind of contextualizes what I'm saying when I say that charity is not the solution. Yeah, charity is not the solution. Charity is what? Charity is a temporary measure just to relieve. You know, we're doing this because we want to relieve the difficulties of the ummah. But long term, if we want to win, long term, if we want to see the stopping of this oppression, then we need to strengthen ourselves in numerous other ways. We got to think 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ahead and not just think reactionary. Okay, now Muslims are being slaughtered here. Okay, let's go and help them. It doesn't work like that, my dear brothers and sisters. And that's why supporting 5 Pillars and projects like this, media outlets that can speak about the narratives, can shed light on the oppression of Muslims and Islam is so important. So I urge every single one of you guys to donate and support right now. You don't understand how imperative and how important it is for your brothers and sisters in Syria. If you want to support your brothers and sisters here in Syria, then you need to support 5 Pillars, inshallah ta'ala.
Jazakumullah khair, my dear brother. Brothers and sisters, just to add to what Brother Tox just said, the link is above my screen, 5pillarjuk.com/live.